Imagine a competitive podcast format where two hosts sit across from each other, passing vocal warm-ups back and forth as fast as they can speak. The foundational rule is simple. Fire off complex tongue twisters back to back, with no pauses between turns and zero room for hesitation. This diagram shows the chaining mechanic. A host finishes, "Peter Piper picked a pickled pepper." The final letter P detaches and moves across the screen. The second host populates that new line with a phrase starting with the inherited letter before the rhythm breaks. The chaining rule forces the speaker to monitor the end of their own sentence while simultaneously preparing the next, creating a constant overlap of high-speed tasks. The hosts track a cumulative total for the episode, establishing a score they must attempt to beat in future recordings. Operating under a strict time limit adds a severe layer of tension. Relying on panicked, randomized memory under rapid-fire pressure leads to a stumble long before a record is set. Attempting to memorize hundreds of distinct tongue twisters by their starting letters is inefficient. The sheer volume of raw data makes perfect recall difficult once the heart rate begins climbing. Setting a lasting record requires moving away from improvisation toward a system where the sequence is decided before the timer even starts. A phenomenon known as dual task interference prevents the hosts from reaching their potential. This occurs when the brain attempts to process two demanding tasks simultaneously, causing performance to degrade. The first task is strictly physical. Rapid articulation requires precise breath control and muscular pacing to avoid stumbling over difficult syllables. At the same time, the host is trying to listen for their partner's final letter and scan their internal vocabulary for a matching phrase. The latency between hearing a letter and retrieving a new phrase creates a stall point. Forcing the brain to handle linguistic retrieval and physical articulation at once eventually leads to a total collapse. As long as the game remains an improvised contest, the hosts will hit a processing ceiling defined by their own reaction times. The solution lies in the podcast rules, which explicitly permit the hosts to repeat tongue twisters more than once per episode. By allowing repeats, the rules enable a predetermined sequence that eliminates the need to invent or recall new phrases on the fly. This closed-loop chain uses three nodes, P, S, and B. Host A delivers a P twister ending on S. Host B takes the S cue, delivering a phrase finishing on B. The final link starts with B, looping back to P, completing the circuit. This closed loop offloads the burden of word retrieval. Instead of searching for the next phrase, the brain monitors a repeating sequence, leaving more capacity for the physical task of speaking. By exploiting the repetition allowance to build this loop, the hosts bypass their cognitive limits and maintain their pace for as long as their lungs hold out. The podcast is a study in strategic optimization. Success depends less on linguistic variety and more on the integrity of the loop structure. When the hosts compete against their previous high scores, they aren't testing their vocabulary, they are testing the efficiency of their system. Once the loop is initiated, the mental puzzle of the game is essentially solved. Memory is no longer a factor in the score. The contest becomes a test of pure physical breath control and muscular endurance. The next challenge is to engineer an even tighter loop, finding the shortest possible phrases to maximize the number of turns within the time limit. The spectacle lies in watching the hosts push the absolute limits of human vocal stamina through a perfectly engineered system.